Hey everyone, welcome back to Rising Stronger. This is Lisa Schoen. First off, if you notice my eyes moving to different places, it's because when I'm doing these Zooms on my own, I'm like, I don't quite know where to look. When I'm talking to people, I'm looking at them, but I'm like, do I look up at the camera, at myself? So don't mind that. But anyway, I wanted to come on today and talk about. I've touched upon it before, but like burnout or when we're just at like our max capacity or these ground zeros and you just have heavy, heavy things and humaning and life just feels too much. Um, and I don't know if it's something in the air, but I know even myself personally, like the last couple of weeks, it's like, whew. It's been heavy. A lot of things going on. And then, friends I've talked to, clients I've talked to, it's just been like kind of a heavy energy. And I'm noticing other people are reporting just, yeah, feeling burnt out or at their max capacity, basically. And that's actually part of the reason I haven't been on as frequently. Like I said last time, there's been, you know, things were super busy and hectic, but I also, you know, recognize in myself, like normally I love podcasting. I don't know how good I am at it, but I really enjoy it. I find it to be like a fun hobby for me, and I feel like it helps me to kind of step into my passion and my purpose. And, I don't make any money off of this. I just kind of do it as a way to give back. And so most of the time, it's something I really love. However, when I'm at my max capacity, I recognize, okay, this is not a time to be pouring out into places. I need to pour into myself. So that was part of my pause. But anyway, because this has been an issue that's come up personally and with lots of people I've spoken to, I wanted to share a few things that you could do. Like I said, I have touched upon some things around this in the past, but this is newer things that I haven't mentioned before. And even if some of it is familiar, sometimes we need that refresher. I know, even me, I teach these things all the time, but sometimes I need a refresher on things as well. So I'm going to dive right in. So if you're noticing I'm burnt out. I don't have anything else to give, to receive, to take in. I recommend taking a personal inventory with yourself. That's why I always love either participating in some type of group or, I just love the concept of doing groups because it's an opportunity to kind of go deeper than we would on our own sometimes and an opportunity to explore ourselves and take inventory of ourselves. And also, the nice part about group is you can also receive feedback from other people. But when you're in this like too much, you need to look at your life. And look at like what are my inputs that either I'm putting in or life is putting in. What are my outputs? How am I showing up? Are there things that I can eliminate? So I want to get into more specifics. When you take personal inventory, one thing to kind of stop and pause and check in with is, am I taking care of myself? Because sometimes, sometimes life can be smooth and easy. Other times it's hard. There's really hard things that we're dealing with. There's really unfair things. There's traumatic things. And the thing that's annoying but necessary to recognize is that we're never done. We're never done with our own personal journeys. We never like get through the hard stuff and then magically make it and all the hard is behind us. Like life, one consistent thing that you can expect is that life will keep on lifing. There will be beautiful, wonderful, magical moments, and then there's going to be pain and hardship and really awful things sometimes. And the it's like if you can start to practice like that radical acceptance, and just kind of accept the idea that we can't avoid pain in our lives, we can't avoid hardships, and that we're never going to be absolved from pain. However, we can do things to help us suffer less in those hard moments. That's step number one, is just kind of accepting that. Now, I'm not saying you need to go through life like super hyper vigilant, super like fearful, super, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because I know it will. Like we don't I'm not encouraging that, because then that can rob our current joy, it can rob our current peace. But it's just kind of like recognizing there's going to be times. So that's number one. Number two, like I was saying, is like, how am I showing up for myself in this world? You've heard me talk repeatedly about doing our dailies. And I actually had a friend ask me not too long ago. She listens to my podcast, and she's like, you always talk about like how you do your dailies, and some of these sound like great ideas, but like how do you stay motivated, or how do you keep up with them? Um, because I hear these things and I get inspired, but then I kind of like lose momentum. And I was sharing with her, just like everyone else, for me, my personal pain is my greatest motivator, because I've shared on here, like, I'm Lisa the therapist, but I'm very much Lisa human. And, there was that season where I was pouring out, giving out, and, buying into that self-sacrificing motherhood and everythinghood, and I still remember what that felt like and what that experience was like, and I don't want to live that way anymore. So remembering the absence of my dailies, the absence of my self-care, and what that was like, what that felt like, motivates me to do my self-care. Um, because I don't, again, it's not to say like doing your dailies takes away all hardship or pain, but now when I'm in hard seasons, that that season lasts much it's much shorter in length. It's much less intense because I take care of myself. Um, and I hope they're okay with me sharing this, but I've always referenced it as dailies. But if you recall Brannon coming on my podcast, and then I was on theirs with him and Tyler, they talk about it's called the daily charge. And I've really loved their explanation of it. So this is not mine. This is belongs to Reclaim Your Heart or the Therapy Brothers, but I'm going to share their description of dailies. And it says, your challenge is to commit over and over, if necessary, to take care of yourself, cultivate your heart, and fill your emotional tank by doing the daily charge. Take some time to think about these different areas and create action for each one that you can do on a daily basis. And the charge stands for connection, hobbies, attunement, rest, God or higher power, universe, whatever you want to call it, and exercise. And I love what they put for each of these, so I'm going to read them to you. Connection. It says cultivating important relationships enriches life and builds a network of support as we face life's challenges. For example, this could be a phone call, a breakfast with dad, a walk with a friend, expressing gratitude to someone, saying I love you, listening, being vulnerable, etc. Um, and then H, I love this one too, stands for hobbies. And it says, this provides vibrance, color, and adventure to our everyday lives and helps to recharge our low batteries. This can include painting, singing, crafting, music, hiking, fishing, designing, writing, rock climbing, hunting, biking, skiing, time with pets, games, journaling, cooking, playing with the kids, doing a sport, gardening, manicure, pedicure, etc., etc. Um, to me, this one, I'm going to be honest, when I do my daily charge, this is the one I find the hardest to do daily. Like, I definitely do my hobbies, but daily's a little tricky. Um, but at the same time, it's so important because, my husband and I, just this morning, we were waking up and getting the kids up and ready for school and packing the lunches and, doing all the mundane daily crap that feels like you do it day in and day out, And don't get me wrong, I love my children. I value like sending them nutritious lunches, like it's important to me. But just the act of doing it and making the lunch. I mean, the kids help too, but it's just, I don't love the act, but I love the um, positive consequences that come from it. But, when he said that, I was like, yeah. And I said, that's exactly why we need these daily charges because, the doing these things, like they said, it brings vibrance, it brings color, it brings adventure to even out the day-to-day grind, you know. Um, the A again stands for attunement, and it says mindfulness increases our awareness, decreases our pain, increases our joy, and provides emotional grounding. For example, mindfulness, guided imagery, breathing exercises, yoga, music, being out in nature, surrender practices, literally stopping to smell a flower, pondering, um, or some type of meditation. And, I don't want to be like a broken record here, but we live in a world where we're constantly running, going, we're constantly getting inundated with input all day long. Um, so much so that I've heard from multiple sources that like our brains and our memory and our focus has like dumbed down to the amount that a goldfish can retain. Like that's kind of disturbing, you know. And so it's important to really take some time. It's like that saying, be still and know. Taking time to be still, to take in, to appreciate, to just be with ourselves. I know I've said this before, but it terrifies me when people are disconnected from this. Because when we connect with ourselves, that is how we connect with our intuition, our wise knowing, and I believe God. Um, and if we don't have that, it's like driving around without traffic lights. And I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but people don't know when to go, when to stop, when to yield. It's chaotic and it's crazy. We need this piece. Um, Rest, it says proper sleep increases physical energy and decreases emotional vulnerability. Regular sleep on a regular schedule is imperative. For example, 7 to 9 hours average per night, and try to stay consistent with bedtime and waking up. My kids hate this, but when you're younger children and when you're adolescents, you need even more. And that's like a thing with my I've got two teenagers now, and it's like they're going to bed later than me, and I'm like, no, you need sleep, and but I could put it out there, but they have to pick it up. But for me, sleep is essential. For all of us, sleep is essential. We need that. In addition to actual sleep, like taking some time to like rest our bodies, even if we're not sleeping, can be helpful. That's one thing I notice sometimes with some of my clients. It's like people, we all have that judging part, or we have these unrealistic expectations of ourselves, and people will look at rest as like being lazy or being unnecessary. But I look at it like we stop and pause to fill our cars with gas so that we can keep going for miles and miles, right? Sometimes taking that rest actually helps us to be more productive after we've taken that breather. Um, and then God, I'm not, I've shared my personal take on God. I'm never here to impose my beliefs, but me personally, you know, whether you call it God or a higher power or universe, it says seeking connection with a higher power connects us more fully to who we are and allows us to have a place to let go of things outside of our control. I personally don't know how people do life without something, you know, because yeah, but this can include prayer, scriptures, other religious readings, being out in nature, or music that helps connect us to God. You know, your relationship with God is exactly that. That is between you and God. And I personally don't think there is a right way or a wrong way. Some people might feel they need to go to church every week to feel connected to God. Other people, like myself, I feel most connected to God out when I'm taking my walks out in nature, practicing that stillness and mindfulness, which I could do anywhere. It's what figuring out what makes you feel most connected. And then exercise, it says increased heart rate on a regular basis provides that chemical flush in the brain that helps to release stress. It's literally like taking our stressors and moving it out and moving it through us. And that's important. And I I like I said, I try my best. I'm a therapist, like I should be doing all these things if I'm teaching it. I'm also human. Like there's days I can't always do all of those, but I do try my best to. And what I tell myself and people I work with is like take that charge and break it down and say, okay, if I only have 5 minutes, 10 minutes today, what can I do in these categories to incorporate them into my daily life? And then also, here's what I can do with 5 minutes. Here's what I can do if I have a half hour. And then here's what I can do if I have half a day, because each day is different. Um, but trying to get as many in as you can. Also, I tell people sometimes I double dip, where it's like I might go for a walk, and that list, according to the list, it sounds like I'm checking off exercise. But in reality, it actually does a lot more for me. It's checking off the exercise box, it's checking off the God box, because, like I said, when I'm out in nature, that's where I feel most connected to God and to myself. Um, Sometimes I use it for connection to listen to a Marco Polo or respond to a Marco Polo. Sometimes I use it to just connect to myself and be still. Sometimes I use it to listen to music, which falls into a hobby. So one act can actually check off a few things. So get creative. All right, that was a little long for one topic, so I'll try to speed up the others. But taking inventory and just checking in with like, am I living a life of purpose? Like, am I living a life that God put me here for, or that brings me meaning and purpose and joy? If no, use that as input. Okay, what do I have in my power to create? Are there things that I can change and shift and adjust to live more accordingly? Sometimes the answer is no. Other times there are things that we can adjust. And that falls into the next thing. I practice the serenity prayer. And for those who are not familiar with it, it says, God or higher power, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Again, we can't control people, their behaviors, their actions, their choices. There are things in life that cards were just dealt with that we just have to accept sometimes, as hard as it can be. Um, we have to accept life might not have turned out exactly how we planned, but then look at, okay, what is the part, like the courage to change the things I can? What, again, what can I change? What can I shift? What do I have the power to create? And then using that discernment, the wisdom to know the difference. Um, kind of where do I need to lean into that radical acceptance and stop fighting against life? And then what do I need to take personal ownership for? Um, Checking in and asking yourself, like, am I miserable because I'm self-abandoning in any areas? Am I not showing up authentically? Am I not living in my truth? Like doing that personal self-reflection. How am I showing up in my relationships? Sometimes when we're tired and depleted and burnt out, we may not be showing up as our best selves, and we can practice that self-compassion and, understanding, but am I capable of still trying to simultaneously create shifts to show up better in my integrity? Um, what else? Do I have any stumbling blocks or unhealthy habits that are contributing to my suffering? Um, and sometimes we, you know, could be in denial about that. Sometimes we might just have blind spots to certain things that other people may be more aware of watching from the outside. So it's kind of like having that courage to check in with yourself and then maybe even asking others, like people that are safe, people that know you well, that you trust, ask for their feedback. Um, Checking in with yourself and saying, how am I managing in these crisis moments? Am I practicing that daily charge? Am I practicing having self-compassion for myself? Am I reaching out to others? Do I have a team? Do I have a support system? And, I always say, there's the saying, I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. And what that means is you don't need to have a huge group of people. You might even have one, two, three, four people, but just having people who um, are safe people. And if you're not sure what that looks like, I have an episode on safe versus unsafe relationships. People who you can show up as your true self and vice versa. People who love you enough to be, well, part of being a safe person is showing up with rigorous honesty despite the consequences. And like people who love you enough to speak hard truth into you, even though it might be hard to hear. Um, like looking to them and asking them about that. Um, and then do I have the proper lines of defense set up to, you know, help mitigate or help work through these things? Do I have enough emotional skill resourcing? Do I have tools, coping strategies? And I always tell people, I've been teaching coping strategies since 2007, a long time now. I can teach them with my half asleep, but even for me, for every single person, when we are in an activated, heightened state, or we're in a ground zero or a really hard time, it can be really tricky to access those tools or resources. So sometimes literally having a cheat sheet, having these things listed out. Here are people I can call. Here are coping strategies I can do. Here are places I can go that connect me to myself, to God or my higher power, that help calm and regulate my nervous system. Like have that easily accessible at all times. Um, Even like having, those statements for yourself. Like there's that saying, treat others the way we want to be treated. I actually think it should be flip-flopped. We need to practice treating ourselves the way we would treat our nearest and dearest friends and family, the people we love, like have the same compassion and empathy toward ourself and our wrestles that we would give our friends or our loved ones. Um, so anyway, if you're in the thick of it, if you're in that ground zero, if you're feeling burnout, oh, one last thing with the burnout. One thing I've been doing is also asking myself, do I have the capacity for this? Because again, even things that on like a good day feel good to me, that could actually be like one of my coping tools. When I'm like really stretched thin, sometimes those things feel like too much, and that's okay. There's days when we're like, okay, I'm up, my tank is at a 90%. I've got this. I want to do these things. But if I'm at a day where I'm like, I'm operating at a 30, I need to like put the brakes on, slow down with what I'm doing. And so like even Marco Polo, for instance, that's typically one of the things that I typically enjoy because it creates connection with others. Um, I just love staying connected with the people I love and hearing what's going on and sharing. But if I'm like burnout, I will stop and ask myself, do I have the capacity to even listen and take in whatever they're going to share? Because the beautiful thing about the people I Marco with is like we have those really authentic relationships where we're sharing our happiest, most joyful, and also our hardest, most heartbreaking. And so I'm taking all of it in. And do I have the capacity to listen? And then also checking in separately, do I have the capacity to respond? Because I like to take the time to be intentional with my responses. So. And then also like, and one last thing is like I'll ask myself, would doing this, um, whatever it may be, task or thing that I'm stepping into, what would bring me the most peace around this outcome when I'm not having a lot of peace with all the things going on? So anyway, I hope this helps. We all have we all have moments where we're in the thick of it and the wrestle. So if this resonates with you or you know someone that really needs to hear this, again, the way that my podcast continues and makes its way is through sharing it. So I would love that. Or if you go on to my podcast, you can rate and review. That helps bump it up for other people to find it. So I appreciate that. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a great day and take good care of yourselves in this world. It's a doozy some days, but we got it. All right, take care.